Question 1. System analysis indicates a need to implement differentiated security policies on a blue coat ProxySG appliance for various user segments within an organization. Which administrative approach best aligns with the goal of granular, role-based security enforcement and facilitates compliance with access control mandates? Option A. Configure security policies that are dynamically applied based on authenticated user group membership, leveraging integration with directory services. Option B. Implement a single, overarching security policy that applies uniformly to all network traffic traversing the ProxySG, irrespective of user identity. Option C. Create security policies that are solely dependent on the destination URL of the web traffic, without considering the source user or group. Option D. Establish static access control lists based on IP address ranges to differentiate security enforcement for user segments. The correct answer is A. Configure security policies that are dynamically applied based on authenticated user group membership, leveraging integration with directory services. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing network security policies on a blue coat ProxySG appliance, specifically concerning the application of security policies to different user groups. The challenge lies in ensuring that access controls and content filtering are applied granularly and effectively, aligning with organizational security mandates and potentially regulatory compliance requirements. Misconfiguration can lead to security vulnerabilities, unauthorized access, or noncompliance, necessitating a thorough understanding of the ProxySG's policy engine and its interaction with authentication mechanisms. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the ProxySG's ability to integrate with directory services, like Active Directory, to define security policies based on user groups. By creating specific security policies that are applied to authenticated user groups, administrators can ensure that different sets of users receive tailored security enforcement. This is best professional practice because it allows for granular control, reduces the risk of overblocking or underblocking content for specific user roles, and aligns with the principle of least privilege. From a regulatory perspective, this approach facilitates compliance by enabling the demonstration of specific access controls for sensitive data or systems based on user roles and responsibilities, which is often a requirement for data protection and privacy regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Applying a single, broad security policy to all traffic, regardless of user identity, is an incorrect approach. This fails to account for varying user needs and risk profiles, potentially leading to overrestriction for some users and insufficient protection for others. It also makes demonstrating compliance with role-based access control requirements difficult. Implementing separate, static IP-based access control lists without leveraging user authentication is another incorrect approach. While it offers some level of control, it is less flexible and harder to manage than group-based policies, especially in dynamic network environments. It also does not provide the granular user-level visibility and control necessary for many compliance frameworks. Configuring policies solely based on destination URLs without considering the source user or group is also incorrect. This method is inefficient and can lead to incorrect policy enforcement if the same URL is accessed by users with different security requirements. It lacks the sophistication needed for modern security postures and compliance mandates that often require user-centric security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this scenario by first understanding the organization's security requirements and any relevant regulatory obligations. They should then analyze the capabilities of the Blue Coat ProxySG, specifically its policy engine and integration options with authentication sources. The decision-making process should prioritize granular control, flexibility, and auditability. This involves designing policies that are tied to authenticated user groups, allowing for dynamic enforcement based on user identity and role. Regular review and testing of these policies are crucial to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 2. Governance review demonstrates that the current access control configuration on the Blue Coat ProxySG 6 is overly permissive, potentially exposing sensitive internal resources to unauthorized access. The review also highlights a lack of granular policy enforcement for specific application traffic. What is the most appropriate course of action to address these findings while ensuring compliance with data protection regulations? Option A. Implement broad, unrestricted access rules for all internal users and applications to simplify management and ensure no legitimate access is blocked. Option B. Disable specific security policies and bypass certain traffic checks on the ProxySG to improve overall network performance and reduce administrative overhead. Option C. Systematically review and refine existing access control lists, ACL, and security policies on the ProxySG, implementing granular controls based on user identity, source/destination, and application type, followed by thorough testing. Option D. Rely solely on the perimeter firewall for all access control and security enforcement, deprioritizing granular policy configuration on the ProxySG. The correct answer is C. Systematically review and refine existing access control lists, ACL, and security policies on the ProxySG, implementing granular controls based on user identity, source/destination, and application type, followed by thorough testing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for granular access control and policy enforcement with the operational reality of managing a large and complex proxy infrastructure. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the principles of least privilege and data protection within the context of the Blue Coat ProxySG 6. 6 is capability, while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the organization. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for misconfiguration to either create security vulnerabilities or impede legitimate business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of existing access control lists, ACL, and security policies on the ProxySG. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only necessary access is granted to specific user groups or applications. By analyzing the traffic logs and policy enforcement points, administrators can identify overly permissive rules or redundant configurations, implementing granular policies based on user identity, source/destination IP, and application type, and then rigorously testing these changes represents best professional practice. This approach directly supports regulatory compliance by demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive data and preventing unauthorized access, as mandated by frameworks that emphasize robust access controls and data segregation. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to broadly disable security policies or bypass specific checks to improve performance. This directly violates the principle of least privilege and creates significant security risks, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches and noncompliance with data protection regulations. Such an action demonstrates a failure to prioritize security over convenience and a disregard for established governance policies. Another incorrect approach is to implement blanket access rules for all users or applications without proper segmentation or justification. This undermines the security posture and makes it impossible to audit or control access effectively, leading to potential violations of data privacy and access control mandates. It signifies a lack of understanding of the security implications of broad access. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on network-level firewalls for access control, neglecting the specific capabilities of the ProxySG. While firewalls are essential, the ProxySG offers more granular application-aware control and content inspection. Failing to leverage these features leaves gaps in the security strategy and can lead to non-compliance with regulations that require specific content filtering or application-level security measures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by first understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to their organization. This involves consulting relevant compliance documentation and internal security policies. Next, they should adopt a methodical approach to policy review, starting with an audit of current configurations and traffic patterns. The principle of least privilege should guide all policy modifications. Thorough testing and validation of any changes are crucial to prevent unintended consequences. Regular review and updates of policies based on evolving threats and business needs are also essential components of a robust security governance framework. Question 3. Implementation of a new security policy to allow specific traffic for a critical business application on the Blue Coat ProxySG 6. 6, which has been identified as being intermittently blocked, requires careful consideration of the application's traffic characteristics and the potential impact of policy modifications. Option A. Block all traffic originating from the application's IP addresses until further investigation can be completed to prevent any potential security risks. Option B. Immediately create a broad firewall rule allowing all traffic from the application's known IP addresses to bypass all security checks on the ProxySG to resolve the blocking issue quickly. Option C. Manually configure the policy based on assumptions about the application's port usage and protocol, and apply the changes directly to the production environment to expedite resolution. Option D. Utilize the ProxySG's Application Visibility and Control (AVC) service to accurately identify and categorize the application's traffic. Test the proposed policy changes in a lab environment that mirrors production, and then deploy to production with comprehensive logging and monitoring. Correct answer is D. Utilize the ProxySG's Application Visibility and Control (AVC) service to accurately identify and categorize the application's traffic. Test the proposed policy changes in a lab environment that mirrors production, and then deploy to production with comprehensive logging and monitoring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for granular control over application traffic with the potential for misconfiguration that could lead to unintended access or denial of service. The ProxySG, as a critical component of the network infrastructure, requires careful management of its security policies. The challenge lies in accurately identifying and categorizing application traffic, especially with the increasing complexity and dynamic nature of modern applications, and ensuring that policy changes are implemented without disrupting legitimate business operations or violating security best practices. The need to address a specific application's traffic while adhering to established security frameworks adds a layer of complexity, demanding a thorough understanding of the ProxySG's capabilities and the implications of policy modifications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and controlled method for modifying security policies. This begins with a clear understanding of the application's traffic patterns and the specific security requirements. Utilizing the ProxySG's built-in application identification features, such as the Application Visibility and Control (AVC) service, is crucial for accurately categorizing the traffic. Once identified, the policy modification should be tested in a controlled environment, ideally a staging or lab setup that mirrors the production environment, before being deployed to production. This testing phase allows for the verification of the policy's effectiveness and the absence of unintended consequences. The implementation should also be accompanied by robust logging and monitoring to track the policy's impact and facilitate rapid rollback if necessary. This methodical approach ensures that security objectives are met while minimizing operational risk and adhering to the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are fundamental to secure network administration. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a policy change without first accurately identifying the application's traffic is a significant security and operational risk. Relying on assumptions about application behavior or port numbers can lead to misclassification, potentially blocking legitimate traffic or allowing malicious traffic to pass through. This violates the principle of precise policy enforcement. Applying a broad, overly permissive policy to circumvent an immediate issue, such as allowing all traffic from a specific IP range, is a direct contravention of security best practices. This approach negates the purpose of granular security controls and significantly increases the attack surface, exposing the network to potential threats. It also fails to address the root cause of the problem and creates a new, more severe security vulnerability. Making immediate, untested changes directly in the production environment without a rollback plan is highly unprofessional and risky. This can lead to widespread service disruption, impacting business operations, and potentially causing reputational damage. The absence of testing and a rollback strategy demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for operational stability and security. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with administering security devices like the ProxySG must adopt a structured and risk-aware approach. This involves a continuous cycle of understanding requirements, planning, implementing, testing, and monitoring. When faced with a need to modify policies, the decision-making process should prioritize accuracy and control. This means thoroughly investigating the nature of the traffic, leveraging available tools for identification and classification, and validating any changes in a controlled manner before impacting the live environment. A robust change management process, including impact assessment, testing, and rollback procedures, is essential. Professionals should always consider the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only necessary access is granted, and maintain comprehensive logging to facilitate auditing and incident response. This disciplined approach minimizes the likelihood of security breaches and operational disruptions. Question 4. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a recent surge in network latency is impacting user productivity. Initial investigations on the Blue Coat ProxySG 6 indicate that a specific category of outbound traffic, previously allowed, is now consuming a disproportionate amount of processing resources, leading to the slowdown. The security team has flagged this traffic category as potentially risky, but there is no definitive evidence of malicious activity. As the administrator, what is the most appropriate course of action to address both the performance issue and the potential security risk? Option A. Analyze the ProxySG access logs and audit trails for this specific traffic category to identify the exact source, destination, and nature of the traffic, and then consult with the security team to determine the appropriate policy adjustment based on the findings. Option B. Immediately block all outbound traffic within this category via a new security policy rule to mitigate the potential security risk and observe if performance improves. Option C. Temporarily disable the security policy rule that allows this traffic category to restore performance and schedule a follow-up investigation into the security implications. Option D. Increase the processing power allocated to the ProxySG appliance to accommodate the increased traffic volume, assuming the traffic is legitimate business-related activity. Correct answer is C. Temporarily disable the security policy rule that allows this traffic category to restore performance and schedule a follow-up investigation into the security implications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of legitimate business traffic. The ProxySG, as a critical component of the network infrastructure, is responsible for enforcing security policies. However, misconfigurations or overly restrictive policies can lead to performance degradation and user frustration, impacting productivity. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the performance issue and implementing a solution that effectively addresses the security concern without introducing new vulnerabilities or hindering essential business functions. This requires a deep understanding of ProxySG functionality, network traffic patterns, and the organization's security posture. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based investigation. This begins with leveraging the ProxySG's logging and reporting capabilities to pinpoint the specific traffic or policy causing the performance bottleneck. Analyzing access logs, audit logs, and potentially packet captures can reveal patterns of excessive resource consumption or policy violations. Once the problematic traffic is identified, the administrator can then evaluate the associated security risk. If the traffic is deemed malicious or a clear policy violation, the appropriate action is to refine the security policy to block or limit it. If the traffic is legitimate but causing issues, the policy might need to be adjusted for performance, perhaps by introducing exceptions or optimizing rule order, while ensuring that security is not compromised. This methodical approach aligns with best practices for network security administration, emphasizing data-driven decision-making and minimizing disruption. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling security features without thorough investigation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses the intended security posture of the organization, leaving it vulnerable to threats. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the administrator's responsibility to protect organizational assets. Such an action could lead to data breaches, compliance violations, and reputational damage. Implementing broad, unverified policy changes without understanding their impact is also professionally unacceptable. This could involve blocking large categories of traffic or applying overly restrictive rules that inadvertently disrupt critical business operations. This demonstrates a failure to conduct proper risk assessment and impact analysis, potentially leading to operational downtime and user complaints, and could violate internal IT policies or service-level agreements. Ignoring the performance issue and hoping it resolves itself is a dereliction of duty. Network administrators are responsible for maintaining the health and performance of the network infrastructure. Failing to address performance degradation can lead to decreased productivity, user dissatisfaction, and potentially mask underlying security threats that are consuming resources. This passive approach is unprofessional and can have significant business consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such a scenario should employ a structured problem-solving methodology. This involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the observed issue, performance degradation. 2. Information gathering. Utilize available tools, ProxySG logs, reports, network monitoring to collect data about the problem. 3. Root cause analysis. Analyze the gathered data to identify the specific cause of the performance issue, distinguishing between security-related and operational issues. 4. Risk assessment. Evaluate the security implications of the identified cause. 5. Solution development. Propose solutions that address the root cause while considering security, performance, and business impact. 6. Implementation and testing. Apply the chosen solution and rigorously test its effectiveness and any unintended consequences. 7. Documentation and review. Document the process, solution, and outcomes for future reference and continuous improvement. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and the network infrastructure remains secure and performant. Question 5. Market research demonstrates a growing sophistication in web-based attack vectors targeting corporate networks. As an administrator of a Blue Coat ProxySG 6, you are tasked with implementing a new risk mitigation policy designed to counter these emerging threats. Given the potential for this policy to impact legitimate user traffic and overall network performance, which of the following approaches represents the most professionally responsible and effective method for its deployment? Option A. Roll out the new risk mitigation policy to a small, non-critical group of users and assume its performance will be consistent across the entire organization. Option B. Prioritize the technical implementation of the risk mitigation policy, focusing solely on its security effectiveness without significant consideration for potential impacts on user experience or network performance. Option C. Deploy the new risk mitigation policy in a monitoring-only mode initially, followed by a phased rollout to progressively larger user groups or traffic segments, with continuous performance and impact analysis at each stage. Option D. Implement the new risk mitigation policy immediately across all users and traffic types to ensure maximum protection against the latest threats. The correct answer is D. Implement the new risk mitigation policy immediately across all users and traffic types to ensure maximum protection against the latest threats. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between implementing robust security measures and ensuring operational continuity and user experience. The administrator must balance the need to identify and mitigate potential risks, as outlined by the ProxySG 6 administration framework, with the practical implications of deploying new security policies. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the impact of a new risk mitigation strategy on legitimate user traffic and system performance, without causing undue disruption or creating new vulnerabilities. This requires a nuanced understanding of both the technical capabilities of the ProxySG and the business context in which it operates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, controlled deployment of the new risk mitigation policy, coupled with comprehensive monitoring and validation. This aligns with best practices in risk management and system administration, emphasizing a proactive and iterative process. By initially deploying the policy in a monitoring-only mode, the administrator can observe its behavior and identify potential false positives or performance degradation without impacting live traffic. Subsequent phased rollouts to a subset of users or traffic types allow for further refinement and validation before full implementation. This methodology minimizes the risk of widespread disruption, ensures that the mitigation is effective against the intended threats, and allows for timely adjustments based on real-world data. This approach directly supports the principles of responsible system administration and risk mitigation, as implicitly required by the ProxySG 6 administration framework, which necessitates careful planning and execution of security configurations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new risk mitigation policy immediately across all users and traffic types without prior testing or monitoring represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This Big Bang approach disregards the potential for unintended consequences, such as blocking legitimate traffic, degrading network performance, or even causing system instability. Such an action would violate the principle of due diligence in system administration, failing to adequately assess and manage risks before deployment. It could lead to service disruptions, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements or compliance requirements related to availability. Deploying the policy only to a small, non-critical segment of users, and then assuming it will function identically for the entire user base is also professionally unsound. While a limited test is better than no test, it fails to account for the diverse traffic patterns, user behaviors, and potential edge cases that may only manifest when the policy is applied more broadly. This approach risks overlooking critical issues that could arise during a full deployment, leading to unexpected problems and a reactive rather than proactive risk management posture. It demonstrates a lack of thoroughness in the risk assessment process. Ignoring the potential impact on user experience and focusing solely on the technical implementation of the risk mitigation is another fail. While security is paramount, a security policy that renders the system unusable or significantly hinders productivity is counterproductive. A responsible administrator must consider the holistic impact of any change, including its effect on end users and business processes. This approach neglects the broader organizational objectives and the practical realities of system usage, potentially leading to user dissatisfaction and workarounds that could introduce new security risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based approach to system administration. This involves understanding the threat landscape, assessing potential vulnerabilities, and then designing and implementing mitigation strategies. Crucially, this process must include a robust testing and validation phase that simulates real-world conditions as closely as possible. Before any significant change is implemented, a thorough impact analysis should be conducted, considering technical, operational, and user experience factors. A phased rollout, coupled with continuous monitoring and feedback mechanisms, is essential for managing complex systems like the ProxySG. This iterative process allows for informed decision-making and ensures that security measures are both effective and practical. Question 6. Operational review demonstrates that the Blue Coat ProxySG 6 is configured to log all traffic and access events with a retention period significantly exceeding the minimum requirements stipulated by the relevant data protection and access control regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and efficient administration? Option A. Disable logging for all non-essential traffic categories to reduce storage and processing overhead, relying on network intrusion detection systems for security event monitoring. Option B. Implement a tiered logging approach where only critical access events are logged with extended retention, while less critical traffic is logged with a shorter retention period or not at all. Option C. Adjust the ProxySG logging configuration to capture only those traffic and access events explicitly mandated by the regulations, with retention periods set to the minimum required duration, while ensuring critical security events are still logged. Option D. Maintain the current configuration of logging all traffic and access events with extended retention, as this provides the most comprehensive audit trail and mitigates any potential compliance gaps. The correct answer is C. Adjust the ProxySG logging configuration to capture only those traffic and access events explicitly mandated by the regulations, with retention periods set to the minimum required duration, while ensuring critical security events are still logged. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for granular access control and logging with the operational overhead and potential for performance impact. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying regulatory requirements for data retention and audit trails in the context of a specific technology, ProxySG, and its configuration. The administrator must understand not only the technical capabilities of the ProxySG, but also the underlying regulatory intent to ensure compliance without unnecessarily burdening the system or creating unmanageable log volumes. The risk of misinterpreting the regulations or overconfiguring the system leads to either non-compliance or inefficient operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a nuanced understanding of the regulatory framework's intent regarding audit trails and data access. It prioritizes capturing essential security events and access logs that are directly relevant to demonstrating compliance with data protection and access control mandates. This approach involves carefully selecting log categories and retention periods that meet the regulatory minimums, while avoiding excessive data collection. It leverages the ProxySG's capabilities to filter and categorize logs effectively, ensuring that critical information is preserved for the required duration without overwhelming storage or analysis resources. This aligns with the principle of proportionality in regulatory compliance, ensuring that the measures taken are appropriate to the risks and requirements. Correct approach is analysis, collecting all available log data without regard for relevance or retention requirements represents a failure to apply a risk-based and proportionate approach. This can lead to significant storage costs, performance degradation, and an unmanageable volume of data that hinders effective incident response and audit. It also fails to demonstrate a clear understanding of which specific data points are mandated by the regulations. Disabling logging for certain categories of traffic or access events, even if seemingly benign, poses a direct regulatory risk. If the regulations require audit trails for all access to sensitive data or specific types of transactions, disabling logging for these areas creates gaps in the audit trail, making it impossible to demonstrate compliance or investigate security incidents effectively. This approach is a clear violation of the principle of maintaining comprehensive audit records. Implementing a blanket, overly aggressive log retention policy that exceeds regulatory requirements without a clear business justification, e.g., specific legal hold requirements, is inefficient and can be costly. While not directly a regulatory violation in terms of asterisk under asterisk logging, it demonstrates a lack of operational efficiency and a potential misinterpretation of the regulatory scope, which often implies reasonable and necessary measures. It also increases the burden on the system and the security team for managing and analyzing this excessive data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this by first thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory requirements for audit trails and data access logging within the applicable jurisdiction. This involves identifying which types of events and data are mandated for logging and for what minimum retention periods. Next, they should assess the ProxySG's logging capabilities and configure it to capture the required data efficiently. This includes utilizing filtering, categorization, and appropriate retention settings. A risk-based approach is crucial, focusing on collecting data that provides the most value for compliance and security investigations. Regular reviews of log configurations and retention policies are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and operational efficiency. Question 7. Investigation of a security incident reveals unauthorized access to sensitive customer data on a Blue Coat ProxySG appliance. The administrator must decide on the immediate course of action, which approach best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional data protection best practices. Option A. Restore the ProxySG appliance from the most recent clean backup to ensure service continuity, and then begin investigating the incident. Option B. Immediately isolate the affected ProxySG appliance from the network, initiate a forensic investigation to determine the scope and nature of the breach, and prepare for regulatory and individual notifications as mandated by applicable data protection laws. Option C. Conduct a full system audit and performance tuning on the ProxySG appliance before investigating the security incident to ensure the system is stable. Option D. Attempt to patch the vulnerability that may have led to the breach without informing any external parties, and monitor the system closely. The correct answer is B. Immediately isolate the affected ProxySG appliance from the network. Initiate a forensic investigation to determine the scope and nature of the breach, and prepare for regulatory and individual notifications as mandated by applicable data protection laws. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of data privacy and the potential for significant regulatory penalties. The administrator is tasked with responding to a data breach notification, which requires a swift, accurate, and compliant action. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to contain the breach with the strict requirements of data protection regulation, ensuring that all actions taken are auditable and do not inadvertently compromise further sensitive information or violate legal obligations. The pressure to act quickly can lead to hasty decisions that overlook crucial compliance steps. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process that prioritizes regulatory compliance and data integrity. This includes immediately isolating the affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, initiating a thorough forensic investigation to determine the scope and nature of the breach, and meticulously documenting all actions taken. Crucially, this approach mandates prompt notification to the relevant regulatory authorities and affected individuals as per legal requirements, while also implementing enhanced security measures to prevent recurrence. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, security by design, and accountability, which are cornerstones of data protection frameworks. By following a structured, documented, and compliant process, the administrator upholds professional responsibility and mitigates legal and reputational risks. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately restoring systems from backups without a proper forensic investigation. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the critical step of understanding the breach's root cause and scope, potentially leaving vulnerabilities unaddressed and failing to meet notification obligations regarding the full extent of compromised data. It also hinders the ability to provide accurate information to regulators and affected parties. Another incorrect approach is to only notify affected individuals after the investigation is fully complete and all remediation is done, without considering interim notification requirements. This can be a significant regulatory failure, as many data protection laws mandate timely notification to both individuals and supervisory authorities once a breach is identified, even if the full investigation is ongoing. Delaying notification can lead to fines and loss of trust. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to conceal the breach or downplay its severity to avoid immediate scrutiny. This is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a lack of transparency and accountability, directly contravening the spirit and letter of data protection laws that emphasize prompt and honest reporting. Such actions can result in much harsher penalties and irreparable damage to the organization's reputation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing a data breach must adopt a risk-based, compliance-driven decision-making framework. This involves 1. Immediate containment. Prioritize stopping further data loss. 2. Investigation and assessment. Understand the breach's impact and scope. 3. Regulatory compliance. Identify and adhere to all notification and reporting obligations based on the specific jurisdiction's laws. 4. Remediation and prevention. Fix vulnerabilities and implement measures to prevent future incidents. 5. Documentation. Maintain a comprehensive audit trail of all actions and decisions. This structured approach ensures that all legal and ethical obligations are met, minimizing harm to individuals and the organization. Question 8. What factors determine the appropriate course of action for a blue-coat ProxySG administrator who discovers evidence of a senior executive engaging in potentially policy-violating personal internet usage, considering the organization's internal policies and the administrator's ethical obligations? Option A. The established organizational policies regarding data privacy, acceptable use, and incident reporting, coupled with the administrator's ethical duty to report findings through designated channels for impartial investigation. Option B. The administrator's desire to gain favor with other executives by uncovering potentially damaging information about a senior colleague, influencing the decision on how to proceed. Option C. The administrator's personal judgment of the executive's character and the perceived severity of the policy violation, leading to a decision to either ignore the activity or confront the executive directly. Option D. The administrator's personal interpretation of the executive's browsing habits as harmless personal activity, leading to the conclusion that no action is necessary and the logs can be disregarded. The correct answer is C. The administrator's personal judgment of the executive's character and the perceived severity of the policy violation, leading to a decision to either ignore the activity or confront the executive directly. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma for a blue-coat ProxySG administrator regarding data privacy and potential misuse of network traffic logs. The administrator has discovered evidence of potentially inappropriate personal browsing by a senior executive, which is captured by the ProxySG's logging capabilities. The challenge lies in balancing the organization's need for security and policy enforcement with the executive's expectation of privacy, and the potential for this information to be used for personal retribution or to influence business decisions unfairly. The administrator must navigate this situation without violating company policy, legal regulations, or ethical principles. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the organization's established data privacy and acceptable use policies, as well as any relevant legal frameworks governing data retention and access. This means reporting the findings through the designated channels, such as the IT security or compliance department, and allowing them to conduct a formal investigation according to established procedures. This approach upholds professional integrity by ensuring that data is handled responsibly and that any disciplinary actions are based on a fair and impartial process. It also protects the organization from potential legal repercussions arising from mishandling sensitive information or from accusations of executive overreach. An incorrect approach would be to directly confront the executive with the information, attempt to blackmail or extort them, or to ignore the findings altogether. Directly confronting the executive could lead to accusations of insubordination, privacy violations, or even legal action if the executive feels their rights have been infringed. Attempting to use the information for personal gain or leverage is unethical and illegal, constituting a severe breach of trust and professional conduct. Ignoring the findings, while seemingly avoiding conflict, could be interpreted as negligence if the browsing activity violates company policy or poses a security risk, potentially exposing the organization to liability. Furthermore, failing to report such findings could undermine the effectiveness of security policies and create a precedent for other employees to disregard them. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must understand and consult the organization's official policies on data privacy, acceptable use, and incident reporting. Second, they should identify the appropriate reporting channels for security or policy violations. Third, they must act impartially and objectively, documenting their findings and actions without personal bias. Finally, they should seek guidance from their manager or the compliance department if the situation is unclear or presents significant ethical challenges. This systematic approach ensures that actions are compliant, ethical, and in the best interest of the organization and its stakeholders. Question 9. When evaluating process optimization strategies for a Blue Coat ProxySG 6 appliance to improve throughput, which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of security logging and audit trails, ensuring compliance with potential regulatory mandates for incident investigation? Option A. Implementing granular logging policies that capture detailed transaction information for all traffic, even if it increases processing overhead, and then tuning specific non-critical log categories for reduced verbosity only after thorough impact analysis. Option B. Increasing the log rotation frequency to a very short interval to manage disk space without considering the impact on the completeness of historical audit data. Option C. Enabling aggressive log compression for all log types, prioritizing storage efficiency over the immediate accessibility and detail of log records. Option D. Disabling detailed transaction logging for all outbound traffic to reduce the load on the appliance and improve overall response times. The correct answer is A. Implementing granular logging policies that capture detailed transaction information for all traffic, even if it increases processing overhead, and then tuning specific non-critical log categories for reduced verbosity only after thorough impact analysis. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network administration, balancing performance optimization with the need for robust security logging and auditing. The ProxySG appliance is a critical component for enforcing security policies and providing visibility into network traffic. When optimizing processes, administrators must consider the potential impact on essential security functions. The challenge lies in identifying and implementing optimizations that enhance efficiency without compromising the integrity or completeness of security logs, which are vital for compliance and incident response. The correct approach prioritizes maintaining comprehensive logging capabilities while seeking performance improvements. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, ensuring that security data is not inadvertently degraded or lost. By carefully analyzing the impact of configuration changes on logging mechanisms, administrators can implement optimizations that are both effective and compliant with security best practices and any applicable regulatory requirements for data retention and audit trails. An incorrect approach that disables or significantly reduces logging for performance gains is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the principle of maintaining an adequate audit trail, which is often a regulatory requirement for security incident detection, investigation, and compliance reporting. Such an action creates a blind spot in security monitoring, making it impossible to reconstruct events, identify malicious activity, or prove adherence to security policies. It also introduces significant ethical concerns regarding accountability and transparency. Another incorrect approach involves making broad, undocumented changes to logging configurations without thorough testing. This can lead to unforeseen consequences, such as the loss of critical log data or the generation of excessive, unmanageable log volumes, both of which hinder effective security operations and compliance efforts. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to change management best practices. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that involves understanding the business and security requirements, thoroughly researching the impact of any proposed optimization on all appliance functions, especially logging, and implementing changes in a controlled, tested manner. This includes documenting all changes, monitoring their impact, and having a rollback plan. The focus should always be on achieving performance improvements without compromising security visibility and auditability. Question 10. The efficiency study reveals that certain user groups are experiencing significant latency when accessing external web resources, impacting their productivity. The Blue Coat ProxySG 6 is identified as a potential bottleneck. The administrator needs to investigate and propose solutions while ensuring compliance with U.S. cybersecurity mandates and data privacy laws. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Rely solely on user reports of slow access and make ad hoc configuration changes to the ProxySG without detailed analysis or documentation. Option B. Analyze the specific traffic patterns of the affected user groups, correlate latency with security policies applied by the ProxySG, and propose targeted configuration adjustments or policy exceptions based on a risk assessment. Option C. Implement a blanket increase in proxy cache size and reduce all security inspection levels across the board to improve general performance. Option D. Immediately disable all content filtering and malware scanning features on the ProxySG for the affected user groups to alleviate latency. The correct answer is B. Analyze the specific traffic patterns of the affected user groups, correlate latency with security policies applied by the ProxySG, and propose targeted configuration adjustments or policy exceptions based on a risk assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between optimizing network performance for legitimate business operations and the need to comply with security policies that might inadvertently impact user experience or access to critical resources. The ProxySG administrator must balance these competing demands while adhering to the regulatory framework governing data access and network security. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is U.S. regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven, and policy-aligned methodology. By analyzing the specific traffic patterns and their impact on user experience, and then correlating this with defined security policies and potential risks, the administrator can make informed decisions. This approach ensures that any proposed changes are not only technically sound, but also compliant with relevant U.S. regulations concerning data privacy, security, and acceptable use. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to maintaining a secure yet functional network environment. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling security features to improve performance would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. U.S. regulations, such as those related to data protection, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data, or PCI DSS for payment card data, if applicable to the organization's industry, and general cybersecurity best practices, mandate robust security controls. Circumventing these controls without proper risk assessment and authorization exposes the organization to data breaches, unauthorized access, and potential legal liabilities. It also violates the principle of least privilege and the duty to protect sensitive information. Another incorrect approach, such as making broad, undocumented changes to proxy configurations based on anecdotal user complaints, is also professionally unacceptable. This lacks a systematic approach, fails to establish a baseline for performance measurement, and bypasses the necessary change management processes. It increases the risk of unintended consequences, such as inadvertently blocking legitimate traffic or creating security vulnerabilities. Furthermore, it undermines the auditability of network changes, which is crucial for compliance with various U.S. regulatory frameworks that require traceable and documented security configurations. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the problem. Clearly define the observed performance issue and its impact. 2. Gather data, collect relevant logs, performance metrics, and user feedback. 3. Consult policies, review existing security policy, acceptable use guidelines, and relevant U.S. regulations. 4. Analyze root cause, correlate performance data with traffic patterns, security configurations, and policy enforcement. 5. Develop solutions, propose specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound smart solutions. 6. Assess risks and impact, evaluate the security, performance, and user experience implications of each proposed solution. 7. Implement and test, deploy changes in a controlled environment, monitor results, and validate effectiveness. 8. Document, maintain thorough records of the entire process, including decisions made and their justification. Question 11. Quality control measures reveal that the Blue Coat ProxySG appliance is experiencing intermittent but significant performance degradation, impacting user access to external web resources. The administration team is under pressure to restore full service immediately. Which of the following actions represents the most prudent and professionally responsible initial step? Option A. Roll back the ProxySG to its last known stable configuration without further investigation to restore service quickly. Option B. Immediately disable the content filtering policies that are most resource-intensive to assess their impact on performance. Option C. Contact Blue Coat vendor support for immediate assistance, providing them with a high-level overview of the performance problem. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive review of ProxySG logs, traffic statistics, and recent configuration changes to identify the root cause of the performance issue. The correct answer is B. Immediately disable the content filtering policies that are most resource-intensive to assess their impact on performance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration where a critical security appliance, the ProxySG, is experiencing performance degradation. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to restore full functionality and user access with the imperative to maintain security posture and comply with established operational procedures. A hasty or uninformed decision could lead to security vulnerabilities, service disruption, or non-compliance with internal policies, and potentially external regulations if specific data handling is involved. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly from stakeholders, users, management adds to the complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented investigation that prioritizes understanding the root cause of the performance issue before implementing any changes. This aligns with best practices in IT service management and security operations. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of change management, incident management, and security auditing, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory frameworks governing data security and operational resilience. By gathering logs, analyzing traffic patterns, and consulting documentation, administrators can identify the specific configuration or traffic anomaly causing the problem. Implementing a targeted fix based on this analysis minimizes the risk of unintended consequences. This methodical approach ensures that any remediation is effective, auditable, and does not introduce new security risks. It also supports compliance with any audit requirements that necessitate a clear trail of troubleshooting and resolution steps. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately reverting to a previous, known good configuration without thorough investigation. This is problematic because it bypasses the opportunity to understand the underlying cause. The performance issue might be a symptom of a larger, ongoing problem or a new threat. Reverting without understanding could mask a critical security event or a misconfiguration that needs a more precise solution. This approach fails to meet the standards of diligent investigation and could lead to recurring issues or security gaps. Another incorrect approach is to disable security features or policies that are suspected of contributing to the performance degradation. While seemingly a quick fix, this directly compromises the security posture of the organization. Many regulatory frameworks mandate specific security controls, and disabling them without proper authorization, risk assessment, and documented compensating controls is a direct violation. It exposes the network to potential threats and data breaches, which can have severe legal and financial repercussions. A third incorrect approach is to immediately escalate the issue to a vendor support team without performing any initial troubleshooting. While vendor support is valuable, it should be leveraged after internal due diligence. Performing initial analysis demonstrates competence, helps to narrow down the problem for the vendor, and potentially resolves the issue more quickly and cost-effectively. Unnecessary escalation can lead to delays and increased costs, and it may not be seen as a responsible use of resources by management. It also bypasses internal incident response protocols. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first adhering to established incident response procedures. This typically involves 1. Identification and logging. Clearly document the reported issue, its impact, and the time it occurred. 2. Diagnosis. Gather relevant data, logs, performance metrics, traffic captures, and analyze it systematically to pinpoint the root cause. 3. Escalation if necessary. If internal expertise is insufficient, escalate to appropriate internal teams or external vendors with a clear summary of findings. 4. Resolution. Implement a targeted solution based on the diagnosis, following change management procedures. 5. Verification. Confirm that the issue is resolved and monitor for recurrence. 6. Documentation. Record all steps taken, findings, and the final resolution for future reference and auditing. This structured approach ensures accountability, minimizes risk, and promotes continuous improvement in operational efficiency and security. Question 12. Quality control measures reveal that the Blue Coat ProxySG appliance in the organization's network is configured to log all outbound HTTP traffic, including full URLs and user agent strings, to a local, unencrypted log file with a retention period of 90 days. The organization operates within a jurisdiction with strict data privacy regulations that mandate the minimization of personal data collection and require secure storage of audit logs. Which of the following configurations best aligns with these regulatory requirements while maintaining essential auditing capabilities? Option A. Disable all logging for outbound HTTP traffic to prevent any potential data privacy violations. Option B. Configure the ProxySG to log only the source IP address and timestamp for all outbound HTTP traffic, with logs stored locally and unencrypted. Option C. Configure the ProxySG to log all available details of outbound HTTP traffic, including full URLs, user agent strings, and any associated cookies, to an unencrypted log file with a retention period of 180 days. Option D. Configure the ProxySG to log only specific anonymized transaction details, e.g., source IP, destination IP port, and timestamp, for outbound HTTP traffic, with logs encrypted and securely transferred to a centralized, access-controlled logging server with a retention policy of 30 days. The correct answer is D. Configure the ProxySG to log only specific, anonymized transaction details, e.g., source IP, destination IP port, and timestamp, for outbound HTTP traffic, with logs encrypted and securely transferred to a centralized, access-controlled logging server with a retention policy of 30 days. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing operational efficiency with strict adherence to regulatory mandates concerning data privacy and security. The ProxySG administrator must ensure that the implemented logging and auditing mechanisms not only capture necessary operational data, but also comply with the specific requirements of the regulatory framework relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying these regulations to the technical configuration of the ProxySG, ensuring that no sensitive data is inadvertently exposed or improperly retained, while still providing sufficient audit trails for compliance verification. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the regulatory requirement for comprehensive logging and auditing without compromising data privacy. By configuring the ProxySG to log specific, relevant events and ensuring that these logs are retained according to defined policies and are protected from unauthorized access, the administrator demonstrates a commitment to both operational oversight and regulatory compliance. This proactive and precise configuration minimizes the risk of non-compliance and potential data breaches, aligning with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, often found in regulatory frameworks. An incorrect approach that involves disabling all logging to avoid potential privacy issues is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action directly contravenes the spirit and letter of regulations that mandate auditing and logging for security and compliance purposes. It creates an environment where unauthorized activities cannot be detected or investigated, leaving the organization vulnerable and non-compliant. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of understanding of the fundamental role of logging in maintaining a secure and accountable network infrastructure. Another incorrect approach, which is to log all available data without any filtering or retention policy, represents a failure in data minimization and privacy protection. While it might seem to provide a comprehensive audit trail, it often leads to the collection and storage of excessive personal or sensitive data, increasing the risk of privacy violations and making compliance with data retention regulations more complex and burdensome. This approach is inefficient and potentially illegal under data protection laws. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves logging only to local storage without any secure off-site backup or access controls is a failure in data integrity and security. Logs are critical for forensic analysis and compliance audits. If they are not securely stored and backed up, they can be lost, tampered with, or become inaccessible, rendering them useless for their intended purpose and creating a significant compliance gap. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory framework, a detailed assessment of the ProxySG's logging capabilities, and a risk-based approach to configuration. Administrators should prioritize logging events that are critical for security monitoring, incident response, and compliance verification, while actively avoiding the collection of unnecessary sensitive data. Implementing robust access controls and secure retention policies for logs is paramount. When in doubt, consulting with legal or compliance officers is a crucial step to ensure full adherence to all regulatory requirements. Question 13. The audit findings indicate that administrative access to the Blue Coat ProxySG is not consistently adhering to the principle of least privilege, with several user accounts possessing elevated permissions beyond their immediate job functions. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this finding? Option A. Immediately disable all administrative access for non-essential personnel to prevent potential misuse. Document this action as a temporary security measure. Option B. Conduct a detailed review of all administrative user accounts and their assigned privileges, systematically revoking any unnecessary permissions and ensuring that access aligns strictly with the principle of least privilege. Option C. Grant broader administrative access to a select group of senior IT personnel to facilitate quicker identification and correction of any misconfigurations. Option D. Assume the audit findings are a false positive and close the ticket, as current administrative access levels have been in place for a significant period without incident. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed review of all administrative user accounts and their assigned privileges, systematically revoking any unnecessary permissions and ensuring that access aligns strictly with the principle of least privilege. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential misconfiguration of access controls on the Blue Coat ProxySG, specifically concerning administrative access. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with robust security and compliance. The administrator must not only identify the root cause, but also implement a solution that adheres to established security policies and regulatory requirements without causing undue disruption to business operations. The challenge lies in interpreting the audit findings, understanding the implications of different configuration choices, and making a decision that is both technically sound and compliant. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the audit logs and the ProxySG's configuration, focusing on the principle of least privilege. This means granting only the necessary administrative permissions to users and groups, and ensuring that these permissions are regularly reviewed and updated. This aligns with best practices for access control and is a fundamental requirement for many regulatory frameworks that mandate segregation of duties and protection of sensitive administrative functions. By systematically analyzing the logs and applying the principle of least privilege, the administrator ensures that access is appropriately restricted, thereby mitigating the risk of unauthorized changes or data breaches. This proactive and systematic approach is the cornerstone of effective security administration and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach would be to immediately revert all administrative access to a default, highly restrictive state without understanding the specific findings. While seemingly secure, this could cripple legitimate administrative functions, leading to operational failures and potentially violating service-level agreements. It fails to address the specific audit finding and instead applies a blunt instrument, demonstrating a lack of nuanced understanding and potentially causing more harm than good. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the audit findings, assuming they are false positives or inconsequential. This is a direct violation of professional responsibility and regulatory oversight. Ignoring audit findings demonstrates a disregard for security best practices and compliance mandates, leaving the organization vulnerable to security incidents and regulatory penalties. It signifies a failure to engage with the established processes for identifying and remediating security risks. A further incorrect approach would be to grant broad administrative access to a wider group of users to expedite the remediation process, believing that more eyes on the problem will solve it faster. This directly contradicts the principle of least privilege and significantly increases the attack surface. It introduces unnecessary risk by expanding the number of individuals with potentially powerful access, making it harder to track and control administrative actions, and increasing the likelihood of accidental or malicious misconfigurations. This approach prioritizes speed over security and compliance, which is professionally unacceptable. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the findings. Fully comprehend the nature and scope of the audit findings. 2. Assess the risk. Evaluate the potential impact of the findings on security and compliance. 3. Consult policies and regulations. Refer to internal security policies and relevant regulatory frameworks. 4. Develop remediation options. Brainstorm potential solutions, considering technical feasibility and impact. 5. Evaluate options. Analyze each option against security, compliance, operational, and business requirements. 6. Implement the chosen solution. Execute the selected remediation plan with careful planning and testing. 7. Verify and monitor. Confirm the effectiveness of the implemented solution and establish ongoing monitoring. Question 14. Operational review demonstrates that a newly deployed critical business application is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues, with initial investigations pointing to the Blue Coat ProxySG security policy as the potential cause. The application team is urgently requesting a resolution to avoid significant business disruption. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this situation? Option A. Implement a broad, undocumented exception for all traffic originating from the application server IP addresses to bypass the ProxySG. Option B. Directly modify the ProxySG configuration on the live system to allow the application traffic without consulting change management or performing prior testing. Option C. Conduct a detailed analysis of the ProxySG logs and policy to identify the specific rule causing the blockage, assess the security implications of a targeted exception, and implement a documented, risk-mitigated change through the established change control process. Option D. Temporarily disable the entire ProxySG security policy to allow the application to function while a permanent fix is investigated. The correct answer is D. Temporarily disable the entire ProxySG security policy to allow the application to function while a permanent fix is investigated. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The ProxySG, critical component for web security and access control, is configured with a policy that is now impacting a newly deployed, time-sensitive business application. The challenge lies in determining the most appropriate and compliant method to address this conflict without compromising overall security posture or violating regulatory mandates. The pressure to restore application functionality quickly can lead to hasty decisions that bypass established procedures. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented, and risk-assessed modification of the ProxySG policy. This aligns with best practices for change management and regulatory compliance. Specifically, It requires identifying the exact policy rule causing the blockage, assessing the security implications of bypassing or modifying that rule for the specific application, and then implementing the change through a controlled process. This process typically includes testing, rollback plans, and appropriate approvals. Such an approach ensures that any deviation from standard security policy is deliberate, understood, and minimized in its risk exposure, thereby adhering to principles of due diligence and responsible system administration, as expected under general IT governance frameworks that underpin regulatory compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling the entire ProxySG security policy to allow the application to function is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This action completely abrogates the security controls designed to protect the organization's network and data from a wide range of threats, including malware, phishing, and unauthorized access. It demonstrates a gross disregard for the organization's security responsibilities and likely violates numerous data protection and cybersecurity regulations that mandate the implementation and maintenance of appropriate security measures. Implementing a broad, undocumented exception for all traffic originating from the application's servers without a thorough risk assessment is also professionally unacceptable. This creates a significant security blind spot, potentially allowing malicious traffic to pass through the network undetected. It bypasses the principle of least privilege and introduces unnecessary risk, which is contrary to regulatory requirements for maintaining a secure environment. The lack of documentation and assessment means that the organization cannot demonstrate due diligence or accountability for the security posture of its network. Directly modifying the ProxySG configuration on the fly without following established change control procedures, even if seemingly a quick fix, is a critical failure. This ad hoc approach increases the likelihood of introducing unintended consequences, misconfigurations, or security vulnerabilities. It undermines the integrity of the system and the audit trail, making it impossible to track changes, understand their impact, or revert them effectively if necessary. This lack of procedural adherence is a direct violation of IT governance principles and can lead to non-compliance with regulations requiring auditable and controlled system changes. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should employ a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes security, compliance, and operational continuity. The framework should include 1. Incident identification and prioritization. Clearly define the problem and its impact. 2. Root cause analysis. Determine the specific policy or configuration issue. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the security implications of potential solutions. 4. Solution design and planning. Develop a controlled, documented, and tested solution. 5. Implementation. Execute the change following established change management procedures. 6. Verification and monitoring. Confirm the solution's effectiveness and monitor for unintended consequences. 7. Documentation and review. Record all actions and conduct post-implementation reviews. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with regulatory and ethical obligations. Question 15. Benchmark analysis indicates that a proposed security policy update on the Blue Coat ProxySG 6 may significantly alter traffic flow and introduce latency for critical business applications. Which of the following approaches best mitigates the risk of operational disruption while ensuring the security policy is effectively implemented? Option A. Roll back the proposed security policy, change immediately upon detecting any minor increase in application response times during initial testing. Option B. Immediately implement the new security policy across all production systems to ensure uniform security posture and address any performance issues as they arise. Option C. Prioritize the security benefits of the new policy and implement it universally, assuming that any performance impact will be acceptable to the business. Option D. Deploy the new security policy to a small, representative group of users and applications in a production environment, closely monitoring performance metrics and user feedback before a full rollout. The correct answer is D. Deploy the new security policy to a small, representative group of users and applications in a production environment, closely monitoring performance metrics and user feedback before a full rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The ProxySG, a critical component of the network infrastructure, is being considered for a significant configuration change. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the potential impact of this change on application performance and availability without causing disruption. A misjudgment could lead to significant downtime, financial losses, and reputational damage, all of which have regulatory implications if they stem from negligence or failure to adhere to best practices. The professional challenge is to conduct a thorough and systematic impact assessment that is both technically sound and aligned with organizational risk tolerance and compliance objectives. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment strategy, beginning with a pilot group and comprehensive monitoring. This aligns with best professional practice by minimizing risk. By testing the new configuration on a small, representative subset of users or applications, administrators can observe real-world performance and identify potential issues before a full rollout. This proactive approach allows for adjustments and remediation with limited impact. Regulatory frameworks often implicitly or explicitly require organizations to implement controls that ensure the availability and integrity of their systems, especially those handling sensitive data. A phased approach demonstrates due diligence in safeguarding these systems and adhering to principles of risk management and operational resilience. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the change across all production systems simultaneously without prior testing is a direct violation of prudent risk management principles. This approach creates an unacceptable level of risk for widespread disruption. Ethically and regulatorily, it demonstrates a failure to exercise due care and diligence in managing critical infrastructure. Rolling back the change immediately after encountering minor performance degradation without further investigation or analysis is also problematic. While responsiveness is important, an immediate rollback without understanding the root cause can mask underlying issues or lead to a cycle of ineffective changes. This can be seen as a failure to adequately assess and address the impact, potentially leading to recurring problems and noncompliance with availability mandates. Focusing solely on the security benefits of the change without considering the operational impact ignores a critical aspect of system administration. Security and operational stability are not mutually exclusive. They must be managed in tandem. A purely security-driven approach without considering the business impact can lead to unintended consequences that undermine overall organizational objectives and potentially violate service-level agreements or regulatory requirements for system uptime. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to change management, prioritizing risk assessment and mitigation. This involves 1. Understanding the proposed change and its intended benefits. 2. Identifying all potential impacts including technical, operational, security, and business. 3. Developing a detailed test plan including pilot deployments and monitoring strategies. 4. Executing the change in a controlled, phased manner. 5. Continuously monitoring performance and security post-implementation. 6. Having a well-defined rollback plan in place. This systematic process ensures that changes are implemented responsibly, minimizing risk and maximizing the likelihood of successful integration while adhering to professional standards and regulatory expectations. Question 16. The control framework reveals a proposed modification to the Blue Coat ProxySG 6. 6 is security policy to enhance outbound traffic filtering. Before implementing this change across the production environment, what is the most prudent approach to ensure operational continuity and compliance? Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment, including baseline performance metrics, controlled testing in a staging environment, and a documented rollback plan. Option B. Rely exclusively on the default security policy recommendations provided by the ProxySG vendor for outbound traffic filtering. Option C. Proceed with the policy change immediately, assuming that enhanced security will inherently improve operational performance without requiring specific validation. Option D. Implement the policy change directly into the production environment and monitor system logs for any immediate anomalies or performance degradation. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment, including baseline performance metrics, controlled testing in a staging environment, and a documented rollback plan. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The ProxySG, as a critical security appliance, can inadvertently introduce latency or block legitimate traffic if not configured and managed with a thorough understanding of its impact. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the potential consequences of a proposed security policy change on application performance and user experience, while still adhering to security best practices and regulatory compliance. A hasty or incomplete impact assessment can lead to significant business disruption, security vulnerabilities, or non-compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven impact assessment. This begins with clearly defining the proposed change to the ProxySG configuration and identifying all potentially affected systems, applications, and user groups. It then requires gathering baseline performance metrics for these affected components before the change is implemented. Subsequently, a controlled testing phase is crucial, where the proposed change is applied in a non-production or limited production environment to observe its actual impact on latency, throughput, and application functionality. This testing should involve key stakeholders and end users to validate performance and user experience. Finally, a rollback plan must be in place to quickly revert the changes if adverse effects are detected. This methodology ensures that security enhancements are implemented responsibly, minimizing disruption and maintaining operational integrity, which aligns with the principles of prudent IT governance and risk management expected in regulated environments. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the change without any prior assessment or testing is a direct violation of responsible IT management practices. It demonstrates a disregard for potential operational impacts and could lead to significant service outages, financial losses, and reputational damage. From a regulatory perspective, this approach fails to meet the due diligence requirements for change management and risk mitigation, potentially exposing the organization to penalties if the disruption causes a breach of service-level agreements or compliance mandates. Applying the change directly to the production environment and then monitoring for issues is reactive and highly risky. Monitoring is essential. It should be part of a controlled testing phase, not the primary method of validation for a significant configuration change. This approach risks widespread disruption before any corrective action can be taken, which is unprofessional and can have severe business and compliance consequences. It suggests a lack of proactive risk management, relying solely on vendor documentation or generic best practices without considering the specific application architecture and traffic patterns of the organization is insufficient. While vendor guidance is valuable, it cannot account for the unique complexities of a specific deployment. This can lead to unintended consequences, such as blocking legitimate administrative traffic or introducing performance bottlenecks that were not anticipated by the vendor. This approach lacks the necessary organizational context for effective risk assessment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured change management process that mandates a comprehensive impact assessment for any significant modification to security infrastructure like the ProxySG. This process should include 1. Defining the scope and objectives of the change. 2. Identifying all potential impacts, technical, operational, security, compliance. 3. Gathering baseline data. 4. Developing a detailed test plan, including success criteria and rollback procedures. 5. Executing the test plan in a controlled environment. 6. Obtaining stakeholder approval based on test results. 7. Implementing the change during a scheduled maintenance window. 8. Post-implementation monitoring and validation. This methodical approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and the organization's security posture is enhanced without compromising business operations. Question 17. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new security policy requiring deep packet inspection for all outbound HTTP traffic on the ProxySG may introduce performance degradation for critical business applications. Which of the following actions represents the most prudent and effective approach to mitigate potential negative impacts? Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment by engaging with application owners to identify critical applications, analyze their traffic patterns, and perform a phased rollout of the policy in a controlled test environment, monitoring key performance indicators before full production deployment. Option B. Rely on the application development team to identify and report any performance problems after the policy is deployed, as they are most familiar with application behavior. Option C. Implement the new policy across all segments of the network immediately to ensure consistent security posture and address any reported issues reactively. Option D. Configure the ProxySG to bypass deep packet inspection for all HTTP traffic to avoid any potential performance issues, and document the security risk as acceptable. The correct answer is C. Implement the new policy across all segments of the network immediately to ensure consistent security posture and address any reported issues reactively. Explanation: the scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The ProxySG, as a critical component of the network infrastructure, plays a vital role in enforcing security policies, but misconfigurations can lead to service disruptions. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the impact of a proposed security policy change on application performance and availability, ensuring that the change aligns with both security mandates and business continuity objectives, without introducing unintended consequences. The correct approach involves a structured and methodical impact assessment process. This process should begin with a thorough understanding of the proposed policy change, including its intended security benefits and potential side effects. Crucially, it requires engaging with application owners and stakeholders to understand the critical dependencies and performance characteristics of the affected applications. A phased rollout, starting with a pilot group or a non-production environment, allows for real-world testing and validation of the policy's impact before full deployment. Monitoring key performance indicators, KPI, during the pilot phase is essential to identify any degradation in application performance or availability. This proactive, data-driven approach minimizes risk and ensures that security objectives are met without compromising business operations. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and risk management, emphasizing due diligence and stakeholder collaboration. An incorrect approach would be to implement the policy change directly into the production environment without prior testing or consultation. This demonstrates a failure to conduct a proper impact assessment, directly contravening the principle of minimizing risk to business operations. Such an action could lead to significant service disruptions, impacting productivity and potentially causing financial losses. Ethically, it represents a disregard for the operational stability of the organization and the needs of its users. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on theoretical assumptions about the policy's impact without validating them against real-world application behavior. This overlooks the complexities of application interactions and network traffic patterns. It is a failure to perform due diligence and can result in unforeseen negative consequences. Professionally, it indicates a lack of rigor in the decision-making process and an abdication of responsibility for potential adverse outcomes. A third incorrect approach is to defer the impact assessment entirely to the application development teams, without providing them with the necessary context or understanding of the ProxySG's capabilities and limitations. While collaboration is key, the Network Security Administrator has the primary responsibility for understanding the implications of network policy changes. This approach creates a knowledge gap and can lead to misaligned expectations and ineffective security controls. It fails to leverage the expertise of the security team in assessing the security implications of the proposed change. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the proposed change, its objectives, and potential risks. This should be followed by a comprehensive impact assessment that includes stakeholder consultation, technical analysis, and phased testing. Continuous monitoring and a well-defined rollback plan are also critical components of a robust risk management strategy. Question 18. Compliance review shows that a recent security policy update on the Blue Coat ProxySG is generating repeated alerts indicating a potential violation of data handling regulations. The policy was implemented to enhance outbound data exfiltration prevention. The administrator needs to address these alerts without compromising the security posture or violating the underlying regulatory framework. Which of the following actions best addresses this situation? Option A. Temporarily disable the new security policy until the compliance team can thoroughly review its configuration and impact on regulatory adherence. Option B. Implement a bypass rule for the affected traffic to circumvent the new security policy, allowing normal operations to continue while the issue is investigated. Option C. Investigate the specific configuration of the new security policy on the ProxySG, correlate it with the relevant data handling regulations, and implement a precise adjustment to the policy to resolve the conflict while maintaining its intended security function. Option D. Ignore the compliance alerts, assuming they are false positives, and focus on other critical security tasks. The correct answer is A. Temporarily disable the new security policy until the compliance team can thoroughly review its configuration and impact on regulatory adherence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, where a newly implemented security policy, intended to enhance protection, inadvertently creates a compliance gap. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for security with the ongoing requirement to adhere to established regulatory frameworks. The administrator must not only identify the technical issue, but also understand its implications within the specific regulatory context of the exam's jurisdiction, which is assumed to be U.S. federal regulations pertaining to data protection and network security for the purpose of this question. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly, without introducing new vulnerabilities or further compliance breaches, adds to the professional difficulty. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic process of identifying the specific policy that is causing the conflict, understanding its technical manifestation on the ProxySG, and then developing a solution that rectifies the technical issue while ensuring continued compliance with the relevant U.S. federal regulations. This includes consulting the policy documentation, reviewing ProxySG logs and configuration, and potentially engaging with the policy's originators to clarify intent or seek an exception if absolutely necessary. The emphasis is on a controlled, documented, and compliant resolution. This represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the established regulatory framework, which is paramount in a compliance-driven environment. It ensures that security enhancements do not come at the cost of legal or regulatory standing, and that all changes are auditable and justifiable. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling the security policy entirely without proper authorization or a clear understanding of its purpose is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses intended security controls, potentially exposing the organization to risks that the policy was designed to mitigate, and directly violates the principle of maintaining a secure and compliant environment. This action lacks documentation, auditability, and a clear rationale, making it impossible to justify during a compliance audit. Implementing a workaround that circumvents the security policy without addressing the root cause or ensuring the workaround itself is compliant is also professionally unacceptable. This approach creates technical debt and a hidden compliance risk. The workaround might be effective in the short term but is often brittle, difficult to maintain, and may itself violate other, unaddressed regulatory requirements. It demonstrates a lack of thoroughness and a failure to integrate security and compliance into the core operational processes. Ignoring the compliance alert and hoping it resolves itself is a dereliction of duty. This passive approach allows a known compliance issue to persist, increasing the organization's exposure to penalties, legal action, and reputational damage. It signifies a lack of proactive security management and a disregard for the organization's legal and ethical obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured problem-solving methodology. First, thoroughly understand the reported issue and its context. Second, identify the specific regulatory requirements that are potentially being violated. Third, investigate the technical configuration and logs on the Blue Coat ProxySG to pinpoint the exact cause of the conflict. Fourth, develop potential solutions, evaluating each for its technical efficacy, security implications, and compliance adherence. Fifth, document the investigation, proposed solution, and the rationale behind the chosen approach. Finally, implement the solution in a controlled manner, followed by verification and retesting, to confirm both technical functionality and compliance. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational policies and regulatory mandates. Question 19. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in latency and packet loss for traffic transiting the ProxySG appliance over the past 24 hours. User reports corroborate this observation, indicating slow application response times. You need to identify the root cause and restore optimal performance. Which of the following is the most appropriate initial course of action? Option A. Contact the upstream internet service provider to inquire about potential network congestion or issues on their end, as the latency is affecting external access. Option B. Temporarily disable all content filtering and malware scanning policies on the ProxySG to see if performance improves, then re-enable them one by one. Option C. Analyze the ProxySG's internal performance counters, CPU, memory, active connection, throughput, and review its access logs for any unusual patterns or error messages that correlate with the observed latency. Option D. Immediately initiate a network-wide packet capture to analyze all traffic flowing through the network segment where the ProxySG resides, looking for any anomalies. The correct answer is C. Analyze the ProxySG's internal performance counters, CPU, memory, active connections, throughput, and review its access logs for any unusual patterns or error messages that correlate with the observed latency. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network administration where performance degradation necessitates troubleshooting. Difficulty lies in isolating the root cause of increased latency and packet loss, which could stem from various components within the network infrastructure, including the ProxySG appliance itself, upstream or downstream devices, or even the applications generating the traffic. The pressure to restore optimal performance quickly, while ensuring compliance with any relevant data handling or security policies, adds a layer of professional challenge. A hasty or incorrect diagnosis could lead to misconfiguration, further performance issues, or even security vulnerabilities. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based troubleshooting methodology, leveraging the diagnostic tools and logs available on the ProxySG appliance. This aligns with best professional practices for network administration, emphasizing a methodical investigation rather than reactive changes. Specifically, examining the ProxySG's own performance metrics, CPU, memory, active connection, throughput, and its access logs for patterns related to the observed latency is crucial. This allows for the identification of potential bottlenecks or misconfigurations directly attributable to the proxy. Furthermore, correlating these findings with network-level diagnostics, ping, traceroute, to and from the proxy, and potentially examining firewall logs if applicable, provides a comprehensive view. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes accurate problem resolution without introducing unnecessary risks or violating any implicit or explicit service-level agreements or security postures. It adheres to the principle of least privilege and due diligence in system management. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately assume the issue lies with upstream network devices and begin making broad configuration changes to routers or firewalls without first thoroughly investigating the ProxySG itself. This is professionally unsound because it ignores the possibility that the proxy is the source of the problem, leading to wasted effort and potential disruption to other network services. It also violates the principle of isolating variables during troubleshooting. Ethically, this could be seen as negligence if it delays the resolution of a critical performance issue impacting users or business operations. Another incorrect approach would be to indiscriminately disable security features or policies on the ProxySG in an attempt to alleviate latency. While security features can sometimes impact performance, disabling them without understanding the specific cause is a significant security risk. This could expose the organization to malware, data breaches, or other threats, representing a severe ethical and professional failure. It directly contravenes the fundamental responsibility of a network administrator to maintain a secure environment. A third incorrect approach would be to solely rely on anecdotal user reports, without validating them with objective data from the ProxySG. User reports are valuable indicators, but they can be subjective and may not pinpoint the exact technical cause. Focusing only on user complaints without technical verification can lead to misdirected troubleshooting efforts and prolonged downtime. This demonstrates a lack of rigorous analytical methodology and a failure to uphold professional standards of evidence-based problem solving. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach performance issues by first establishing a baseline of normal operation, then systematically collecting data from all relevant components, starting with the most likely or most recently changed. The ProxySG appliance, being a central point of traffic inspection and control, is a prime candidate for initial investigation. Utilizing its built-in diagnostic tools and logs is paramount. If the proxy appears to be functioning correctly, the investigation should expand outwards to upstream and downstream network devices, and then to application-level issues. Any configuration changes should be made incrementally, with thorough testing and rollback plans in place. Documentation of all steps taken and findings is essential for future reference and accountability. Question 20. Market research demonstrates a growing need to enhance the security posture of the organization by implementing a new granular web filtering policy designed to block access to specific categories of potentially harmful websites. This policy is complex and has the potential to impact a significant portion of the organization's internet traffic. As the administrator responsible for the Blue Coat ProxySG 6, you need to determine the most effective and least disruptive method for its deployment. Option A. Develop a comprehensive testing plan that includes a phased rollout, starting with a small, representative group of users or a specific network segment, to monitor for any unintended consequences before a full deployment. Option B. Create the new web filtering policy with a broad exception rule that allows all users to bypass the new restrictions, effectively rendering the policy inactive. Option C. Implement the new web filtering policy across all users and network segments simultaneously, relying on the ProxySG's default configuration for this policy type. Option D. Deploy the new web filtering policy immediately to all users, but configure it with a large number of individual user exceptions to accommodate anticipated access needs. The correct answer is C. Implement the new web filtering policy across all users and network segments simultaneously, relying on the ProxySG's default configuration for this policy type. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for granular control and visibility with the operational overhead and potential for misconfiguration. The ProxySG, as a critical security appliance, requires careful management to ensure it effectively enforces security policies without inadvertently blocking legitimate business traffic or creating security vulnerabilities. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate method for implementing a new, complex web filtering policy that impacts a significant portion of the user base. This requires a deep understanding of the ProxySG's capabilities, the potential impact of policy changes, and the regulatory environment governing data access and privacy. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a controlled, phased rollout of the new policy. This methodology allows for thorough testing and validation in a limited environment before full deployment. By initially applying the policy to a small, representative group of users or a specific segment of traffic, administrators can identify and rectify any unintended consequences, such as false positives, blocking legitimate content, or performance degradation, without disrupting the entire organization. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and the need for due diligence in implementing security controls, ensuring compliance with any applicable regulations that mandate the protection of user data and the availability of essential services. The phased approach minimizes risk and allows for informed adjustments, ultimately leading to a more robust and effective security posture. An incorrect approach that involves immediately deploying the policy to all users without prior testing is professionally unacceptable. This would violate the principle of prudent system administration and could lead to widespread disruption of business operations, impacting productivity and potentially causing reputational damage. From a regulatory standpoint, if the policy inadvertently blocks access to essential services or information required by users, it could lead to noncompliance with regulations that mandate reasonable access to information or services. Another incorrect approach, which is to implement the policy with overly broad exceptions, undermines the very purpose of the new filtering requirement. While exceptions are sometimes necessary, making them too extensive negates the intended security benefit and creates a significant security gap. This could be seen as a failure to adequately implement mandated security controls, potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny if a breach or incident occurs due to the weakened policy. Finally, an incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor default settings without customization or validation for the specific organizational context is also professionally unsound. Default configurations are generic and may not adequately address the unique risks and requirements of the organization. Relying on them without proper assessment demonstrates a lack of due diligence and could result in a policy that is either too restrictive or insufficiently protective, both of which carry regulatory and operational risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, understanding the business impact of the proposed change, and evaluating the technical capabilities of the security appliance. A structured approach, including planning, testing, phased deployment, and ongoing monitoring, is crucial. This iterative process ensures that security policies are effective, efficient, and compliant with all relevant regulations, while minimizing disruption to the organization.